Hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Temi Dosun. I'm a commercial lawyer and I'm the head of disputes, labor employment, and the TMT group at Farmville. And I'm not doing this edition alone. We've got really, really important people in the house, people you would love to meet from Mishcon de Reya. I'll allow them to introduce themselves to you.
Thank you, Timmy. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Falkof. I'm a partner in the international arbitration team at Mishcon de Reya. My focus is on international arbitration in the energy and the infrastructure and the oil and gas and transport sectors. I do a substantial amount of work across Anglophone Africa, and I'm South African.
Thank you for having us. My name is John Sendama. I'm a partner in the dispute resolution department at Mishcon de Reya. I specialize in complex multi-jurisdictional disputes with a particular focus on asset tracing and recovery cases, as well as complex investigations.
Thank you. My name is Timothy Folaranmi. I'm a managing associate barrister at Mishcon de Reya. I'm part of the white collar crime and investigations team. Our team represents individual and institutional clients who are facing suspected wrongdoing or investigations by various enforcement agencies and law enforcement within the UK and indeed overseas as well.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm sure you can see that we have a very eminent panel of speakers, this morning, and I'll be asking very interesting questions. I'm sure if you want to ask questions, you can always email your questions to us. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer subsequently. But before that, I have my own questions here, so watch out for them. I think I want to start with Timothy.
Please do.
Yeah. So one of our practice areas in Farmville here, because we're a full service law firm, I'm sure you listeners you know that, and we do a lot of work across various sectors. But one area that strikes my fancy, especially recently, is the area of due diligence and corporate investigations, because now that there's a bit of political stability in Nigeria, elections have come and gone. The post-election disputes in courts are also over, and we know the current administration. They've been the president himself, I know, has been on several trips to countries like India and the likes to see how a lot of investment and capital can be unlocked, and we have an inflow of that into Nigeria. And of course, I'm sure business leaders, and in-house, lawyers who are listening to us, might have a few, questions around that. Because when funding comes into a country, when there's a lot of capital inflow, there are consequences, there are risks and all of that. I mean, you are a practitioner, of many years around the anti-bribery and corruption space, around due diligence and investigations. So I want to ask you, for the benefit of our listeners, in an economy like Nigeria that is about to experience, a very massive boost in that regard, how important is corporate due diligence? How important is investigations, corporate investigations? How important is it to businesses? How important is having very vital policies in place, such as anti-bribery, and corruption policies in place, for Nigerian businesses, especially Nigerian businesses who are expanding, who have subsidiaries and they're expanding from foreign jurisdictions. I mean, you've seen it all, in the UK, where there's a lot of corporate investigations work. So for in-house lawyers listening, for investigation practitioners, listening, how important should that be for them? Over to you.
What I would say, I think that it's very, very, very important. And I see like Nigeria as a land of opportunity. Lots of foreign investors and individuals are looking for ways into the Nigerian market. And I think that's only going to continue to grow, particularly, obviously, now there's political stability, the election positions are done and dusted with. And so I think for in-house lawyers and general counsel, it's really important that they have adequate procedures, processes and controls in place to safeguard the business interests of their company. And so some of the things that I think are really important in that regard is ensuring that there is a culture within the company, and that culture is clear about the company's attitude to things like bribery, to things like corruption, and not and that culture has to start from the very top of the organization, because obviously leadership is what sets the tone for how an organization moves and indeed conducts its business, and that should be supported by having adequate policies in place. And so they have to look at obviously Nigeria's laws in relation to bribing, corruption, legal requirements, and training is also an important feature. And so ensuring that there's ongoing training for all levels of staff who are engaged in business, and so that everybody knows how we handle issues that could arise, for example, in a transaction that the business is involved with. I think it's also important where it's needed to seek external legal expertise. Obviously, in-house legal teams do a fantastic job, but they shouldn't be afraid where it's needed to seek external help, and to have proper systems in place. For example, whistleblowing procedures. And so if there is suspected wrongdoing and somebody wants to make a whistleblowing report, what is the process for doing that? Are all staff aware of how that should be done? And then once that whistleblowing report is made, how is that dealt with? What sort of policies and procedures in place, with that? So it's really all about safeguarding the interests of the business. And so by doing that, and in order to do that, there has to be appropriate policies and procedures in place that is pushed from the top and is adhered to and is constantly reviewed and monitored. And I think those are some of the things that will help in terms of the growing market that Nigeria obviously is, and for companies who are doing business here and want to attract foreign investments into the country as well.
Brilliant. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are taking free legal advice, and there's a lot of knowledge being shared right here. I'm going to go right to John. John has done a lot of work. He's a commercial litigator. Done lots of work in the litigation space, commercial litigation. He's been involved in lots and lots of asset recovery and assets tracing in various jurisdictions of the world. So I mean, asset tracing and asset recovery, again, it's another direct consequence of high-profile economic activity. Of course, in your cross-border experiences, you've had to work with consultants, you've had to work with lawyers across various jurisdictions. In a place like Nigeria, some of the laws are not so supportive, in terms of having, the best or the premium, kind of asset recovery or asset tracing that you want. So it now devolves on, lawyers to try and find, new ways of assisting, foreign counsel like you. So I would ask you, what are your expectations from, lawyers on the ground here in terms of, driving, service delivery as far as asset tracing and asset recovery is concerned? Do you understand my question?
I do, yes.
All right.
Yes. So in terms of the way we tend to operate in our multi-jurisdictional asset tracing cases, we work very much side by side with local partners on the ground in the jurisdiction, whether that's our legal colleagues, experts in asset tracing and recovery and complex litigation, much in the same way that we are, or whether it's our investigative colleagues. So investigators who have a deep knowledge of the jurisdiction, who understand investigative methodology that works and is specific for that jurisdiction. They understand the quirks of operating. They have the on the ground human intelligence capabilities. Yeah. And so in order to service our clients, we need to be able to have that synergistic approach to our asset recovery exercises. And a key factor in relation to our legal colleagues and our legal partners when we're working is, one, understanding the local system, understanding the difficulties that we're likely to encounter in a case which essentially has asset recovery at its heart, and being able to work with us on the international strategy so that we are not bogged down with the base proceedings. And so what we tend to find is often when we work in various jurisdictions, one of the pitfalls that we run into is a slow judicial process where our opponents, who in asset tracing and fraud cases, often try and take advantage of the system, making court applications to slow things down, to try and wear down the other side, to try and frustrate our clients, drive up costs for our clients. So what we tend to find is the practitioners that we work with who are able to support our international efforts are the ones who understand those pitfalls. They understand the tactics of their opponents and are able to counter those, obviously to the extent possible within the framework that they're working in. But they understand those tricks and those tactics, and they're able to assist us by pushing back on those and trying to keep the proceedings in which we are operating in support of on track. And the approach that we tend to use, and the methodology that's at the heart of our exercise, which shortens timescales for our clients, reduces costs for our clients, and produces results that are superior and arrive much sooner, is we focus on applying for international injunctions in support of the local proceedings. So in this case, it would be proceedings in Nigeria. We would be seeking the support of foreign courts, especially where there are assets that have been hidden away in the usual suspect jurisdictions where assets are hidden, the offshore jurisdictions. We're able to apply, particularly in common law jurisdictions, for injunctions in support of the local proceedings. So what we tend to find is most useful is a local expert who understands how to keep the local proceedings on track in such a way that they have this under control here, and we can use the other proceedings to feed information back to them that they can then use in the local proceedings, and then information gets fed back, and we can use that in the global proceedings. Again, working with our investigative colleagues to widen the net in terms of where the assets may be, to locate those, and to essentially repatriate.
That was such an educative feedback from John, and I would say that a lot of our lawyers out there, a lot of practitioners, I'm sure they are happy to hear some of the innovative measures that you've been able to develop over the years, in terms of assisting in jurisdictions where institutions are not as strong as some other jurisdictions, and I'm sure they are happy to hear that, because I'm sure a lot of our colleagues, a lot of our friends, a lot of people within the industry, they are interested in doing more work as far as asset tracing and asset recovery is concerned. Thank you so much, John. Now I'll move to, I'm sure everyone has been waiting for Greg to speak. I think Greg is in love with Nigeria.
Very much so.
And I think Nigeria is in love with Greg.
Perhaps we have to give, maybe that will be, for you, those of you who will be commenting and sending us your questions. Maybe you should just suggest Nigerian names, for Greg, and at the end of the day, we'll put it in a ballot and you just get to pick one. Greg has, done a lot of work for the Nigerian Bar Association. He's always featuring prominently in the Nigerian legal and arbitration space, and I'm sure we want to, tap some of his expertise and his experience along that line. So this is for you, Greg. Disputes, litigation, cross-border arbitration, it's always a function of, the color, the texture, the shape, and the form of dispute resolution, clauses, basically. No one gets to talk about that, but that's like the fountain, that's like the foundation, that's where it all starts from. And I know that a lot of business leaders, a lot of general counsel, a lot of in-house lawyers, they more or less are the stakeholders in the disputes and arbitration ecosystem, who more or less determine how all of this play out. Now, with your experience being involved in the enforcement of awards, cross-border arbitration, international arbitration, basically, now working backwards, and I want us to do some kind of reverse engineering, what would you advise in terms of how best to approach disputes while you are drafting that contract, while you're drafting that joint venture agreement, while you are drafting that MOU, whatever commercial, document you are drafting as a Nigerian business lawyer, as a Nigerian in-house lawyer, as, a general counsel, in terms of how best you want to resolve, that dispute? What do you want them to have in mind when drafting such contracts?
I think that's a fascinating question. And the reason it's a fascinating question is because it's not discussed enough, as you said. And in my experience, so a lot of my experience is on international transactions where you have companies and parties into a contract from two different jurisdictions. There's a lot of difficult, complicated negotiations that go on. We see that there are certain clauses in the contract during the negotiation phase that ultimately become bargaining tools, bargaining chips. Well, I'll give you that if you give me this, and we can agree this and we can agree that. And in my experience, quite often the dispute resolution clause is something that the parties are willing to bargain away in order to gain more tangible benefits on the commercial side.
Yeah.
A lot of my disputes arise from contracts where the dispute resolution clause has become a bargaining chip, which, from the disputes perspective, makes it very difficult.
That's sad.
It is sad. I can understand it. Of course, you can understand it because you're looking to get the best deal. Of course, you are. But when that deal goes wrong, what does the shape of the dispute look like? And if the shape of the dispute when the deal goes wrong is not very, very clear, in other words, if the dispute resolution clause is not very simple, is not very straightforward, if it gets massively negotiated, changed, the governing law changes, the institution changes, there's multiple layers. As soon as it gets really complex, then the shape of the dispute itself gets very complex. And that is where disputes in the international arbitration sphere, I think, can be improved a lot. Because as soon as you have a complex dispute resolution clause, you have a very complicated shape of the dispute. You then have clever lawyers that come in for both parties, for both sides, and ultimately we create complexity within the dispute resolution clause, which is procedural complexity. And the dispute for the clients is not about the procedure, it's about the substance, who's right, who's wrong on the contract. And that itself gets substantively complicated. But as soon as you add the procedural complications on top of the facts of the dispute, you then have an entire dispute that gets very difficult. And in those situations, I think clients can always take an easy way to avoid the multiple complications of the facts and the procedure. You can avoid that by making sure that the procedure is very simple and straightforward. And the way to do that is when you're drafting a contract, don't treat the dispute resolution clause as a bargaining tool.
You hear that?
You hear that? Don't treat the dispute resolution clause as a bargaining tool or a bargaining chip. It needs to be simple and straightforward. And ultimately you need to be able to agree something that can't be messed around with, that can't be changed, where you can't have clever lawyers from around the world creating difficulties and creating procedural disruptions. That needs to be straightforward. And the reason it needs to be straightforward is because then you can focus on the real issues in the dispute, the commercial issues in the dispute, because ultimately that's what the clients care about.
Really, Thank you so much. I think that's, must have been very enlightening for some of our colleagues. I'm sure they are happy to hear that. We don't have so much time, so I'm just going to ask you, it's like a double barrel question,
Shoot. I'll give a double barreled answer.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, what do you love the most about Nigeria? And what do you love, about Farmsville? That's, where we are. That's the law firm that is hosting this session. So in a minute.
What I love most about Nigeria is the people.
Oh.
I've been here many times, and every time I come here, I just get an overwhelmingly positive, welcoming reception. It's a joy to be here, and I love it. I love when Nigerians come over to the UK. I have lots of Nigerian friends. I love the people. So if you were all transported to the UK, that would be even better for me.
Greg is happy to host you. I'm at Farmsville.
I mean, look where we are.
Yeah.
We are in a specialist recording studio.
Yeah.
I've never seen another law firm in Nigeria that does that. So what I like about Farmsville, you're innovative. You think differently, and congratulations, and I wish you all the best. It's a great way to do that.
Thank you very much. John, over to you. What do you love the most? Double barrel also.
Yeah.
What do you love the most about Nigeria?
Yeah.
And what strikes you as interesting about Farmsville?
Double barrel question. I have a single barreled answer because actually the answer is the same for both.
Okay.
So I love the energy of the place, the dynamism, the entrepreneurialism, hustle. The place has hustle, and it's really quite exciting to be around and to be involved with. And I think a very kind of optimistic outlook on the future and really what can be achieved and where Nigeria can grow, not just internally but on the global landscape.
Yeah.
And I think that very much encapsulates from everything that I've learned at Farmsville. They're exactly the same. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. So, in colloquial terms, we'll say he loves our big energy. So, yes, over to you, Timothy. Double barreled again.
Yes.
What do you love the most about Nigeria, and what do you love about Farmsville? I'm sure our listeners want to hear that.
Okay, well, I'll start with Farmsville. I think my answer is sort of similar a little bit to what Greg and John have said. I think obviously you're very, very innovative, and I think that's really exciting. I think that's what the Nigerian legal market needs, and I also love your commitment to ethical excellence, because I think that's really important. And so I would say those are the two things that I love most about the firm, and obviously I continue to wish you well. So far as Nigeria is concerned, I would say, what do I love about Nigeria? Well, there's so many things to be loved. The first thing that comes to my mind is obviously the food, but that's quite a generic answer. So I'll leave that aside. I love the fact that Nigerians are innovators. And Nigeria hasn't always been an easy terrain, and I think there's a saying which I'm sure we're all familiar with, that if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. But I think when it comes to Nigerians, if life gives them lemons, they will build a lemonade factory.
Ooh.
I think it's that ability to sort of innovate and to sort of turn difficult situations around and really think innovatively and come with a new way of thinking and develop ideas and develop things that whether it could be business or ideas, and I think you see that potential all over the world, because Nigerians all over the world are making it and are doing really well, and it starts from here, because this is a source of that. So that's what I love most about the country.
All right. Well, you've heard it live and direct. Our friends and our colleagues from Mishcon de Reya, a law firm in the UK. You've heard our friends Timothy, Greg, and John speak about the work they do, the good work they do on that side of the planet, and also their Nigerian experiences. So we'll look forward to your comments, and we hope you can also engage with them, follow them on LinkedIn, and if you see them, Greg has said he's happy to host you guys in the United Kingdom. So basically that's it from us. See you next time, and until then, say bye bye.
Bye bye.